Hey, welcome to Cohn and Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Larry Krueger. There's actually news about the 49ers this week. The last few weeks there wasn't. Now, all of a sudden, it's trickling in pretty heavy. We got talks about the quarterback. We're going to talk about some defensive linemen the Niners could sign, possibly trade for. But first, there is a high-profile safety on the market who's going to be a free agent that is now being linked to the 49ers. According to Albert Breer, the 49ers are in the market to sign Jesse Bates, free safety, formerly with the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you think of this news?
It's huge news. It absolutely is huge news. And I think the thinking is that Steve Wilkes, likes to blitz a little bit more, but also likes to play a little bit more zone, and really, loves the single high, the cover three look with the single, which means you got to have a deep middle player. And who's that player going to be? Hufanga is going to be in the box doing what Hufanga does, but who's going to be that deep middle player? Is it going to be Jimmy Ward, or is it going to be the top safety in the market? And that's Jesse Bates. Now, Derwin James Derwin James and Minka Fitzpatrick are the highest paid safeties in pro football, Grant. And those guys make, I think, $18-19 million a year. They're speculating that it's going to take 14 or 15 annually to get Jesse Bates signed. But maybe the 49ers feel like, the one thing about Bates, I like Jimmy Ward more than Bates in that Jimmy Ward is probably going to be cheaper, and
Right.
Jimmy Ward's maybe a little tougher. But Bates is probably a little bit better coverage player, and he's younger. He's 25. So do you go for the younger coverage player in Jesse Bates, who was a good player at Wake Forest, who's been a good player in the NFL? Or do you, at least throw that out there as a possibility? Maybe that helps your negotiations with getting Jimmy Ward back, because I think you could probably get Jimmy Ward for closer to 10.
Right, but as you pointed out, Jimmy Ward's older. I absolutely buy this. It doesn't really seem like the Niners, I mean, I don't know, but it doesn't really seem like the Niners and Jimmy Ward are working towards a reunion. Maybe I'm wrong. It seems like the Niners want to upgrade that spot. And if you're going to upgrade it, it's Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates is a hell of a player. And I kind of get the logic. Like, a lot of people want the Niners to re-sign Emmanuel Moseley. Emmanuel Moseley is a good cornerback, sometimes a very good cornerback, but he's coming off a torn ACL, and cornerbacks are really expensive. Jesse Bates is arguably a better player than Emmanuel Moseley, but will be cheaper because safeties get paid less than corners, which is kind of strange because they both can make a huge impact. And really, Jesse Bates is a playmaker. If you're going to take down the best quarterbacks in the league, guys like Patrick Mahomes, you might need a playmaker at the back end of your defense. The Bengals have had more success against the Chiefs than anyone. They've had this guy. I could see it. I mean, I actually think it would be a pretty good signing, Jesse Bates.
I think it would almost be, if someone's asked me, like, what would Bates be? I think he would be a combination of Gibson and Ward. I mean, Gibson is a highly productive interceptor who, gets picks. Bates had 4 interceptions this last year, where Ward is more of a coverage player, a little bit more physical, but Bates gives you that better than Gibson. So, like, in some ways you get the physicality of Jimmy Ward, but then you have the productive ball interceptor of Tayshaun Gibson, and you're getting it in a 25-year-old as opposed to a 30-year-old. Both those guys are a little long in the tooth. I think if you have Bates, Grant, I think you can play man or zone. If you have Gibson, I think you're really going to have to play zone. If you have Ward, you can play man or zone, but he doesn't give you that same production as far as intercepting the football. So, there's a little bit, I mean, you're paying a premium price, but you're also getting a player who was among the league leaders in interceptions. He had 7 pass breakups, and he's far younger. You got a player that you can, 5 years in NFL terms is a lot of years. It's a big difference.
And the Niners invest a lot in defense in an offensive league, but this is the kind of defensive player I think it's smart to invest in. He's not playing man-to-man coverage. They can't call him for ticky-tack pass interference penalties. He's not a big hitter. He's not making his money based on annihilating people. He is a playmaker at the back end of your defense. Those are valuable. Those are rare. The Niners have Talanoa Hufanga, but he's more of a playmaker near the line of scrimmage. He's not really that back end ball hawk. If you can get one of those guys, they're actually cheaper than corners, and sometimes they're more valuable. So I'm cool with them signing Jesse Bates. I think it'd be a better value than signing Emmanuel Mosley.
The issue is missed tackles. Bates does miss some tackles, but I think the real impetus for this is that Wilkes' defense puts a lot on the table for the free safety in that deep middle. I mean, you're asking one player to cover a ton of grass, and Bates has proven he can do it. I mean, he's gotten better every year for the most part, as for how, as far as how he's graded out, but he's also played. He's been, he hasn't gotten hurt a lot. He's played a lot of football. So, in a lot of ways, you got Gibson, who's maybe a little bit of a liability in man coverage. You got Jimmy, who doesn't really want to play. He wants to play free safety, but is probably best as a slot corner. And I think Jimmy is more of a corner than a safety. I think his angles are just okay, but Jimmy is a culture player, and he definitely is like one of those guys that the other guys in the room look up to as far as a hitter, a leader. You know what I mean? So they're losing a lot there.
But true. But again, and that's all the more reason I think they're in the market for Jesse Bates. The Niners are committed to having the best defense in the league. They want to have the best defense, which is ironic because they have an offensive coach. But they build to their defense. And if they're going to let Tashawn Gibson and Jimmy Ward go, those are two good players. They're not just going to replace them with rookies that they take with pick 174. Like these are the 49ers. This is a win now team. They're going to go get upgrades, especially on defense. And so I think Jesse Bates is that guy. If they don't get Jesse Bates, then they're going to call up Jimmy Ward. They're going to call up Tashawn Gibson. They're not going to take a step back on defense. They don't want to.
Yeah, no. I mean, they want to. I mean, and the other thing is that Wilkes might have come in and said, "Hey, you know what? I need a great free safety." And then you're looking at the Bengals. They have 34 million in cap room. A lot of people would ask the question, well, if Bates is such a player, why don't the Bengals want to retain him? It's just that they have an awful lot of talent that's starting to hit the free agent market.
Right.
And they've got some great players that have to be paid.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay T. Higgins and Joe Burrow and all their guys on offense.
Jamar. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, this makes sense. The other thing is, if you're going to replace Jimmy Ward, you can't replace him with just an okay player.
That's what I'm saying.
You got to replace him with somebody who's, like, by all accounts, at least the equivalent or an upgrade. And younger players, it's a little bit. I mean, I think there's some good safeties in this draft. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit of a crapshoot. I mean, that's a very difficult spot to play.
It's going to be tough to find a safety in this draft who's like Jesse Bates, runs a 4.5, runs a 6.73 cone, runs a 4.2 20-yard shuttle, has a 35-inch vert. I mean, this guy is a premium athlete who is also a playmaker in the NFL. I mean, good. I mean, what this guy is. Now, maybe you say, what, the Niners have spent enough money on their defense. They've extended so many. You're not even allowed to play defense in the NFL anymore. I get that. I understand that. I mean, if it's between spending $15 million a year on this safety or $15 million a year on a right tackle, you could sway me to say it'd be more prudent to spend that money on offense, on a right tackle, because look, you're not allowed to play defense in the NFL. They will flag you. I don't know. What do you think? Better to spend this money on offense?
I just think that you need athletes on defense, and then you can't fake it. You know what I mean? You can't fake athletes. So I would rather, just look at the Niner roster, Grant. Look how many guys are on the Niner roster who are significant players who were not day one or day two picks. Juwan Jennings, Colton McKivitz, Spencer Burford, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. Charlie Warner. They've got a bunch of guys. I'd rather put the money on defense and find guys on the offense that fit my scheme than try to, spend a bunch of money on offense and try to, make it all happen on defense. I don't think you can fake the defense. I think you need the athletes.
All right, let me ask you this before we move on. Instead of splurging for Jesse Bates, because you splurged at middle linebacker and D tackle, and you're about to splurge on D end, if you want to draft a guy, what do you think about trading up for Penn State safety Jair Brown? Are you familiar with his game? What do you think?
Yes,
Could he be a plug and play player?
I love him. I
Okay.
think he's a tremendous player.
Okay.
He was on the Bruce Feldman freaks list earlier this year, which is he comes up with the workout freaks. He's an incredible workout warrior. But then, I mean, you're talking about a guy who power cleans a ton, and he just got he's very, very strong, very, very explosive athlete. Um, the great part about him too is he's a player. He was the
Mm-hmm.
MVP of the Rose Bowl. So I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
anybody watched Utah and Penn State in the Rose Bowl this year, but Jair Brown was the MVP of that game. He's really solidly put together, about 5'11, 205. He's yoked up, but he plays fast. He plays physical. Yeah,
Is
I
he
love
fluid?
him.
Is he fluid in the open field?
Yes. Yeah, he's a New Jersey kid who's really tough, really confident, really
Kind of
well
reminds, kind of
coached.
sounds like Talanoa.
Yeah.
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 Well, there's a guy right there. If they don't want to spend 5 years, whatever, 8, whatever it's going to cost to bring in Jesse Bates, here's a guy in the draft right here. It's nice to have options. What's his name?
Jair Brown. Jair Brown. And,
Jair
and the guy
Brown.
had 15 career takeaways with the Nittany
There you
Lions.
go.
He had 9 picks, 3 fumble
There you go.
recoveries, 3 forced fumbles. He had a 87-yard pick six against Maryland. He had 2 interceptions against Arkansas in the Outback Bowl in 2021. Then he was the MVP of the Rose Bowl this year. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of his. I love him. I mean, he might be the best. You might be able to get him with, he's probably going to go early third round, maybe late second. So you might have to trade up for him, but he'll be in the ballpark of where they're picking.
Yeah, and it seems to me like you got a big hole at free safety. You got a big hole at right tackle. If you sign Jesse Bates, then you're not signing a right tackle. You got to draft one. And man, good offensive tackles are first round picks, right or left. So I don't know if the Niners can even get one in the draft, but Jair Brown, it seems like they might be able to finagle their way, if they're good at finagling, to get him. So it seems like maybe that's the move instead of spending on Jesse Bates. I don't know.
I mean, you need an offensive tackle, but if I were them, I'd probably try to hit the safety spot twice, hit it in free agency, and then hit it again in the draft. You
So
got enough
you would
guys.
say don't hit it and quit it.
Don't hit it and quit it.
Don't hit it and
and
quit
keep
it.
hitting it.
Keep hitting it again. All right. Irfin says Geno just got extended 3 years, $105 million. My
Wow.
goodness. Geno Smith to the Seahawks, 3 years, $105 million. That's a lot of cash. What do you think of this news?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a ton. That's a ton. So I think that's an overpay. I didn't think he was great late in the year. He's 33. He's probably played his best football, but who knows? I mean, he's another culture player for them.
Right.
They love him. He,
Right.
how many guys do you know of that don't break out until their 9th NFL season? I mean,
He's got
but he had
a little
30
Rich Gannon in
touchdowns.
him, right? He's got a little Rich
Yeah.
Gannon in him. Yeah.
And he legitimately played well. I think he's like I think a pleasant surprise as a starter, but I don't think they're winning Super Bowls there. But he
Yeah.
threw for 30 touchdowns and
He was good.
led them to a wild card berth in a rebuilding year. So
He's good.
supposedly he has a really good rapport with Pete,
Yeah.
with the offensive coaching staff, with the receivers. So he's ready to roll. But I think Seattle hits quarterback in the draft in addition to Geno.
Yeah. To me, this is why you should be drafting quarterbacks every year or every other year, because you don't want to be in a situation where your option is spend way too much for a good quarterback or have no quarterback. That's tough because you see good quarterbacks make way too much money. They're way too expensive. Great quarterbacks make a lot of money too, but at least they're great. Good quarterbacks, what are you paying for? A guy who's going to fold against the 49ers 3 times a year? That's what you're paying $35 million a year for? Great. You think the Niners are upset or scared? Probably laughing right now. So what you're better off doing is being like the Niners and being able to plug and play quarterbacks on rookie deals over and over and over again. I'd rather do that than do this desperation, disgust. I hate this.
Well, so what is
Hate
the
this.
what was the AAV on that?
Oh,
Let's see.
I mean, that's like 35 million a year,
Okay, well,
almost.
I mean, Derek Carr, who I don't think is very
Yuck.
good, just got an AAV of 37.5 million from the
Yuck.
Saints.
Gross.
So that's where
They're
we're
not
at.
going anywhere with Derek Carr. Geno Smith is better. I'll take Geno over Derek at this point.
I would
Derek's
too.
taking too many hits. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want the smoke, is my analysis of Derek Carr. Doesn't want the smoke.
But I mean, Geno, I think, just makes you good enough to not get a top 5 pick, but just bad enough to not really help you win the Super Bowl. So I don't know that Geno is worth 35 million a year. Pretty sure he's
I mean,
not. But
is Geno Smith better than Will Levis? Like they could have just they could have just taken some guy. I mean, they want to run the ball anyway in Seattle. You want to
yeah.
run the ball. You could draft someone, and he's probably even more talented than Geno Smith and way cheaper. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I guess we'll see how it goes with Seattle. I wouldn't have done it. That's too much. Way
The
too
bottom
much.
line is there's going to be, okay, so there's 4 quarterbacks going in the first round. Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. They're all going in the first round. All right. Last year, only one quarterback went in the first round. But then there's this other group: Hendon Hooker,
Yeah.
Tanner McKee,
Yes.
Jaron Hall from BYU,
I just
Jay
wrote down
Kaner,
Hendon
Max
Hooker.
Duggan, Clayton Tune, Stetson Bennett, who actually
DTR.
look good. I did a whole video on DTR. Aiden O'Connell,
Yep.
Malik Cunningham. There's a bunch of guys. Now, the bottom line, Grant, is that one or two of those guys in that second group are going to be able to play. But the difficult part is just figuring out which guy can play. So,
I have a feeling I know who it
you
is.
could waste 3 years trying to do that. So that's why the Niners picking of Purdy was such a revelation, because they got it right in the last round, and now they've got a piece that they can utilize.
But what I would say is, don't stop looking. Don't stop looking.
Never stop looking.
Always be looking. It's the quarterback position. And with the guy I like this year who's not going in round 1, Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker. I think from Seattle's perspective, they would have been better off like just franchise tagging Geno and drafting Hendon Hooker, because face it, if he hadn't torn his ACL, his resume is right there I mean, he's got a better resume than Anthony Richardson. He's got a better resume than Will Levis. He's always been an efficient passer. He's big. He's a good athlete. I mean, in round 2, that's a good pick.
Yeah.
That's a good pick.
All those guys, though, I mean, like Tanner McKee is 6'6", 230 and throws strikes. So if you're really going to have a strong running game, heck, you could do worse off than Tanner McKee.
My question is, how slow is Tanner McKee? Is he slow, or is he he's slow?
Yeah,
I don't like slow quarterbacks. I'm biased against slow quarterbacks. I have a prejudice against slow quarterbacks.
Against slow quarterbacks?
I have a prejudice against slow quarterbacks. Yeah. Geno Smith, congratulations. God love you. But I feel like this is good news for the 49ers in a sense.
Well, just because they beat Geno twice last year, or 3 times last year.
They're not scared of Geno. There's a specific type of quarterback that beats the 49ers. The mobile guy that gets outside the pocket and has an initial burst to get away from Nick Bosa. That's not Geno. Maybe it was 10 years ago, but it's not now. It's Marcus Mariota. Honestly, if the Seahawks had signed Marcus Mariota, I think the Niners would be like, we got to face him twice a year.
Right.
Honestly.
But they don't. The Niners in Atlanta.
I still don't understand why the Niners aren't interested in the type of quarterbacks that consistently beat them. They always bring in the slow guys that they feast on. Like the guy we're going to talk about in a minute. Stephen Pryor says Bud Dupree, Leonard Floyd, and Frank Clark all being cut today. Frank Clark getting the axe. Woo! So new pass rushing options in the market. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Bear with us, Stephen. I promise. First, let's talk about this rumor from also Albert Breer. He says that the Niners are in the market for Jesse Bates. Albert Breer says the Niners could be interested in signing Baker Mayfield, which maybe shouldn't be a surprise. It seemed like they might have been interested in claiming him off waivers last year if they had been in position to do so, but they weren't. What do you think of this? What does it mean?
As long as you put his locker right next to Nick Bosa, and Nick Bosa, as I'm interviewing Baker, starts saying, Baker.
What happened to your career, Baker?
Baker. The way Bosa says Baker's name is awesome.
Baker never recovered from that, by the way.
I love.
Never.
At first, when I first heard the news, I was like, I hate this. But you know what? I like it. I like Baker Mayfield with the Niners. Why? Because Baker Mayfield has been humbled, he's been broken, and he's been given up for dead. And
Mm,
that's when I want that guy, because he still has mobility, he has arm strength, he has moxie, he's been humbled in the Niner culture. He would be silenced. I think he's good enough to start and push those guys. And I think like let's just say Baker had been the guy instead of Josh. They would have said still had a chance to beat Philly, and they didn't have a chance once Brock got hurt. So I think that's key. I like the idea of Baker. The other reason I like Baker is I think Baker needs the Niners more than the Niners need Baker, and Baker knows it. So he can come here, rebuild his value, and I think it's a great move. Why? Because at the worst case scenario is he never plays a down, and you rebuild his value, and you might be able to trade him in a year or so, for more than what you got. Because I think this guy knows how to play, and I loved what I saw of him at the end of the year against the Raiders, and I think that's just kind of proof that what, the Browns are a bad organization. The Browns be Browning, and he looked better with the Rams, and he looked better with the Niners than he looked with the Rams, because the Niners have weapons, and there's mobility there, there's moxie there. And if Kyle Shanahan remember the first thing Kyle told us about his quarterbacks when he went for Hoyer? It was like, I like to have two quarterbacks that have similar skill sets, so I don't have to change
mhm.
the offense every time I go from quarterback one to
You
quarterback
did
two.
say that.
Baker and Purdy are very, very similar. Right-handed, short quarterbacks who can make plays with their arm, but can make plays with their legs. I realize his commercial to touchdown or commercial to win ratio sucks, but that's why he's been humbled, right? He's been
Yeah.
humbled. I'll say this: I like Baker more than Dalton, probably a little less than Mariota, because I think Mariota's got mobility that's really
Yeah.
difference making. But there's obviously some issue with Mariota. I think I'm biased on that because he completed 93% in the game that I watched.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how
Me
could
too.
you
Me
not be
too. Me too.
biased? But I'd much rather Baker than Matt Ryan, than Jacoby Brissett, than Andy Dalton, and probably he's like
That's
right there
fair.
with Mariota for me. So I'd be all about that. I don't know what that means for Trey, but I'd be all about that as far as adding a third
At what
quarterback that
price
can
though?
actually play.
At what price? You see me
Uh,
over here holding my nose. Like I'm not
eight
a big
million or
Baker fan.
less.
Oh, see, here's the thing. I would
I
rather
would say I'd
just
like
draft.
him at 5. I'd like him at 5.
Again, I would rather draft Hendon Hooker and give him, $1 million a year in round 2 or whenever. They're not going to get Hendon Hooker. They don't have a
But here's
second
the
round
problem,
pick.
Grant. What if Hendon Hooker had surgery of his own
Right.
this year?
They're not going to get Hendon Hooker. I would rather draft a quarterback than
But what if that
I
quarterback
would.
has to play week 1?
I would rather draft a quarterback. I mean, if they
Really?
can,
Okay.
if they can have success with Brock Purdy, I think they can do it with another quarterback. I think they've shown they need a quarterback who's experienced, can do the basics, has a little bit of quickness, a little bit of accuracy, and is pretty smart. I think Brock Purdy could have started week 1 last year. I think he could have. I mean, it's not like Trey Lance was that great. It's not like anyone on the offense was that great week 1 last year. I think the Niners have shown that if they can have success with Brock Purdy and that rookie, that they should keep doing it. Better
Are
to
you
bring
rooting for
in.
Stetson Bennett? Because I
He
will
he
say this:
fits. He fits.
of
He
all the
fits.
quarterbacks that are going to be available to them, I think that's the guy that's probably most ready to play week 1, week 2, if you had to play him.
I'd rather draft Stetson Bennett than sign Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield's been injured. He's not as fast as he used to be. He's not as confident as he used to be. Like I'd rather, and I know it worked with Seattle and Geno, but I'd rather draft a quarterback than do the reclamation project thing. This guy's going on his 4th team in less than 2 years. There's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with Carson Wentz. Maybe, hey man, if the team that drafted Brock Purdy should let it ride. You're on a heater at the Vegas, at the casino, at the craps table. Let it ride. You're that team.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say is I'm really confident that some quarterback after, let's say, the top 5 or Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, for Anthony Richardson, Hendon Hooker. I think those 5 guys are probably going to be the first 5 quarterbacks. I'm really confident that one of the next 5 or 6 guys, McKee, Jaron Hall, Jake Hayner, Max Duggan, Clayton Tune, Stetson Bennett, DTR, Aiden O'Connell, somebody in that group probably is going to be a good NFL player. I just
Yes.
don't know which one. And that's
Me neither.
that's the
But if the
problem.
Niners could find Brock Purdy, they should feel confident in their ability to figure out which one of those guys is right for them. Because again, you're taking a quarterback who was on whatever college team and putting him with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Trent Williams, and Kyle Shanahan. Like, he's never been in this situation before. As long as you can do the basics, hit the checks down as in the screens, and do a little play action, you're in business, baby. Like, Brock Purdy wouldn't have had that level of success on just any team. Now, he was a big contributor and a big reason, but he was in the right place at the right time, right? I think another quarterback could benefit the way he did. Maybe not have the exact same level of success, but a lot of success.
It's a good discussion. I will say this, though. Can we have this discussion a week from now? Because
Yes.
a week
We
from
don't even
now,
know.
I think,
Yeah.
like, if Brock Purdy is going to be out to December,
Right.
I don't want to go with Stetson Bennett. I'd rather go with Baker Mayfield. But if Brock Purdy is going to be back week 1, then you know what? And you got Brock and you got Trey, and then I'm probably okay with Stetson Bennett. You know what I mean? Or DTR or some other young quarterback who I have confidence in. But
Yeah.
if I'm looking at week 1, like right now, if you knew Brock Purdy's not there for week 1, and then it's just about Trey's got to go through all of camp and all of the
Yeah.
preseason and stay healthy. Otherwise, the season could be lost. I don't know, man. I don't
I
know if
just
I
feel
can
like
put
there's
my I don't know if
diminishing ups.
I'm a gambler, but I don't know if I can put my whole
No, I hear
season
you.
on Stetson Bennett. You know
That's
what I mean?
fair. That's fair. I just feel like there's diminishing upside with Baker Mayfield, and on this team where every quarterback gets hurt, I'm thinking Baker wouldn't last 8 games. But if you only need
I'm
him for
more worried
7
about who
or
he
6,
is. Are you
yeah,
worried about his
there
play?
is something
I'm more worried
off
about
with
his
him.
personality.
Every time he goes to a team, there's like someone who tweets something like, no, like a teammate, like, no, please, why did you have to? Robbie Anderson, I mean, Nick Bosa already has totally clowned this guy. Seems like one of these guys is easy to hate.
I know. I'll say this though, it's an intriguing quarterback market. I saw Robert Saleh have a quote about, because the Jets wanted they wanted Carr, then Carr went to the Saints today. Now they're saying they're all in on Rodgers. A lot of people saying they want Jimmy. But I saw a quote from Saleh saying, hey, I believe that Zach Wilson's going to get a whole lot better, whether it be here or elsewhere.
Oh, wow. It's
And when
hilarious.
he said elsewhere, I was like, woo, I know Steve Young really believes in Zach Wilson. I think if you ask me, if you gave the 49ers instead of the 3rd pick, if they had the 2nd pick, I think they would have gone Zach Wilson.
That would have been a huge mistake.
I would not be shocked if Zach Wilson were traded if the 49ers had interest there.
Wow. I just don't understand it. Like, wow, you already have Trey Lance. Zach Wilson got more than 20 starts, was awful. His entire team hates him.
Bad.
Really bad. But yeah, I mean,
his values.
I know the Niners did like him. Chris Sims, I think the Niners liked him a big time. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to him because something's going to happen to him.
Right. Would you take him here?
No.
What do you think of having 3 quarterbacks and having Brock and Trey and Zach Wilson?
I'd rather draft a quarterback. No. Zach Wilson, he's already got too much baggage. I don't need that. We don't need him. He's a loser. Nah. I also think he was like a COVID mirage. He had one good year. It was a weird year. It was really shoddy scouting that year because there wasn't even a combine. Yeah, no.
But here's the one thing. I will say
he's not a great athlete.
I hear you, but here's the one thing. At BYU, never played with any kind of a muddy pocket with bodies all around him. That takes getting used to. In the NFL, you don't ever play in a non-muddy pocket. There's constant bodies around you. I think there's an adjustment that he needs to make, that he probably will make. I'll say this, and I'm going to say it for everybody on March 6, 2023. Zach Wilson in the future is going to have far greater value than he has today.
Sure, because he has no value right now. He has negative value right now.
Right. He doesn't have a lot of value right now.
Kev F says, which quarterback can they draft sign that can beat Mahomes?
Yeah, that's
not
the
Geno.
question.
Not Geno, apparently. See, that's why to me I understand teams like potentially taking Anthony Richardson with the number 1 pick. You have to really swing for the fences if you're trying to win a Super Bowl here. Like, it's Patrick Mahomes, and the guys right beneath him are Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. Like, if you're coming to the fight with Brock Purdy, no disrespect, like, you might not really make it to the finish line. You just might not. So I understand a team saying, I mean, I got to try at least with this guy who's, got premium athleticism. Even though it may not work out, you got to try. I understand.
I hear you. My whole thing is I watched a lot of Anthony Richardson. If you have 1st and goal from the 5, yeah, good luck defending that guy because he can run it, he can throw it, you can move the pocket. He's just incredible. He's 240. He can break tackles like a big power running back. But man, there's a big difference between making throws on air and at Indy compared to, playing. He still struggled to complete passes at times. So it's not
right.
I don't think Anthony Richardson's stepping into anybody's team this year and just lighting it up. I think
but what could happen is let's say he gets drafted by Indianapolis, who just hired the offensive coordinator from Philly. And let's say Steichen. Yeah. Let's say they draft him there and they put him in the backfield with Jonathan Taylor. Like, right now, you got one of the most dangerous rushing attacks in the league. It's a good offensive line too. And you think, well, if we have this, great running game and a quarterback, if he can just hit some throws down the field, all right, we got something. And then if we can improve him gradually over the next 3 years, maybe we can be like Philly. But I mean, we'll see if it happens. Jalen Hurts did a whole lot more in college than Anthony Richardson did. Richardson is just hype at this point in athleticism. New camera looks thumbs up. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It took me a while to figure out how to do it, but I figured it out.
Good looking camera, man. I like that camera.
Thanks. So it sounds like Leonard Floyd is going to get cut. He's been around the block. The Niners need another pass rusher, preferably someone cheap. What do you think, Leonard Floyd?
I'm a Leonard Floyd guy. I've loved him at Georgia. He's explosive coming off the edge. So yeah, I like Leonard Floyd more than a lot of the free agent edge rushers. I like him a whole lot more than Jadeveon Clowney. Mm-hmm. Did they cut him today? There was talk they were going to trade him, Leonard Floyd.
Oh, I don't think they've cut him yet.
Yeah, but they may be forced to cut him. I mean, I would even give a late day 3 pick to get him because I think Leonard Floyd opposite Bosa. I mean, the one thing you got to do, you got to have somebody who can get the edge at will. I mean, I like Jordan Willis. I like Amenahue. I liked Ebukam. None of those guys are Leonard Floyd. I mean, I think Floyd is better than all 3 of those guys. And as far as Frank Clark, I like Leonard Floyd, the person, better than Frank Clark, the person. I think the 49ers care about that. So I know there's been a lot of speculation.
They will not sign Frank Clark. They will not sign Frank Clark.
He runs hot. And then Khalil Mack, is maybe out there. And people are saying,
I don't even think they're going to re-sign Amenahue. And did Amenahue get charged? Did he get, I don't even think
I asked Barrows about it earlier today. He said it hasn't worked itself out yet.
Oh, then I bet they won't sign him.
Yeah. Because that's an entanglement that, that they don't. So and then you saw the report over the weekend that Ebukam's getting offers of $10 million. That's too rich for their blood. So I think
gone.
Jordan Willis maybe gets a nice little raise and they address it in the draft and in free agency. But, especially because of Ebukam's injuries, I don't think they're going to pay him $10 million.
Floyd would be a nice sign. I don't know if they can afford him, but if they can, he'd be kind of perfect because they've been trying to replace D Ford for years. That's not Drake Jackson. You saw the way they used Drake Jackson when they used him last year. He was an interior rusher. They need a speed rusher off the edge because that was D Ford. And if they could have a 4-man pass rush of Bosa, Armstead, Drake Jackson, and Floyd, that'd be pretty good. That would be pretty formidable. So I don't know if they can afford it and make it happen, but they should try.
Oh, he'd be awesome.
He would be pretty perfect. This one's kind of out of left field, but the Tennessee Titans seem to be tearing it down. Jeffrey Simmons was their first-round pick defensive tackle 4 years ago. Excellent player, but it seems like they're going to do to him what the Niners did to DeForest Buckner, which is trade him right before they give him an extension because they don't want to give him an extension because he's probably going to get $20+ million a year because he's really good. Should the Niners trade for him and give him that extension?
Man, I don't know what the Niners have to trade for him other than Trey Lance and Javon Kinlaw And I don't think that would be enough. I think you'd have to trade a number one. I don't think you have to trade a number one and Trey, but I'm just saying you'd have to trade a number one. I mean, this is there. It looks like Tennessee is trying to do the move that they did last year. Last year they had AJ Brown. They could have paid him. They didn't want to pay him. They traded him, and they got a pick, and they used it on Traylon Burks, and they essentially replaced him, but they downgraded.
Yeah,
Um, I think that the 49ers, when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over the team, Grant, they really wanted to make defensive line their identity. We want a dominant defensive line that everything kind of like our dominance on the defensive line leads to everything else. That's where we want to build our team. Well, if they still believe that philosophy, I don't see how they wouldn't be interested in Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons is a monster. If you didn't catch him this year, he wears 98. He's as good a defensive tackle outside of Chris Jones as there is. And, he commands a double team. And as Armstead gets older, he's not quite the same player. You don't have a tag team guy inside with him. You got a bunch of edge guys in this draft, but it's really hard. It's going to be really hard to find a D tackle. Yeah, I absolutely would be calling Rand Carthon and saying, Rand, what are we talking about here? What's the trade? What's the deal? And I would try to figure out a way to get Jeffrey Simmons. I think if you could put Jeffrey Simmons and Bosa and Armstead on one line, I mean, freak. I mean, that would just be incredible. I mean, and then maybe you could get by with some younger DBs or, some younger guys in the secondary if you're going to spend your money up front. So I'd be all about Jeffrey Simmons. There aren't that many tackles that are awesome against the run and still have to be combo blocked, in the pass game. He's one of
it's
them.
true.
So he's dominating. And if they still believe that, then I think they ought to go in that direction. I like
Yeah,
that idea.
if they could afford him, I think that'd be great, but I don't think they can afford him. I don't think any team can pay Bosa $35 million a year and Armstead $25 million a year and Simmons $28 million a year. It'd be nice, but this is again why you got to be careful with the extensions you give out. Eric Armstead, good player, but man, you'd rather be given that money. You'd rather have Jeffrey Simmons. You'd rather have Jeffrey Simmons, and I think this kind of precludes them from getting him, which is too bad. Again, it'd be great to have all three of them. Imagine that in real life or in Madden. It would be devastating. But, man, that's a lot of money to tie up with three players. I don't think they'll do it. I think Parag Marate probably would put his foot down and say, you know what? We're not spending more than 22% of our salary cap space in the D-line. 22%! That's probably what he'd say.
Well, look at Philly, though. They had Fletcher Cox, and then while they had Fletcher Cox, they went out and got Javon Hargrave. So, I mean, it was like they could have easily said, hey, man, we got Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. We got all these guys. We're pretty set. Instead, they're like, no, bring us Javon Hargrave. And they almost won the bowl. So, I don't know. Simmons
the Niners could backload the contract so that it becomes expensive after Armstead leaves. They could do something creative like that. They really could.
I mean, I'll say this. You got to decide what's more important. Is Jesse Bates more important? Or I think they've got one big swing in them in either the free agency or trade market. Maybe it's for Jesse Bates on the back end. Maybe it's for Jeffrey Simmons up front. But just looking at the draft, I know there's a lot of D tackles, but there's not a lot of Jeffrey Simmons.
Well, you would have to get Jeffrey Simmons to agree to a backloaded contract. You would have to trade next year's first round pick and maybe Trey Lance as well. You'd have to get him to agree to a backloaded contract, and which would mean probably like a 5 or 6 year deal. Buckner didn't want that. Buckner wanted a front loaded contract. I think that was part of the problem with him and the 49ers. I can see it. I mean, it makes sense. Imagine him and Bosa. Forget Armstead. Imagine Simmons and Bosa on the same D line. That'd be as good a 1-2 as any defense in the league, really.
What would you do it if Rand came to you and said, I'll give you Simmons for next year's one, Trey, and Kinlaw? Making that deal? I mean, you're probably going to have to do something with Kinlaw if you made this deal.
No, it's a good question. I would rather invest and focus this offseason on offensive line. That's where I'm coming from. But if you're going to go D-line, this is the guy to go. I think it's very, very clever. But I wouldn't do it. No, I would go splurge on a right tackle. I feel like you gotta get upgrades at right tackle and center. But what I want to ask you is, if you don't go the Jeffrey Simmons route, were there any defensive tackles that piqued your interest in the combine? Someone that might be able to start next to Armstead if Javon Kinlaw can't do it.
Yeah, I mean there was a few. Zach Pickens is one of my favorites from South Carolina. He's probably going to be there in the third round. He's 6'4", 295. He moves incredibly well. Loved him. Um, he was
295.
what's that?
295. Do we need someone who's 320 to replace DJ Jones, or can they get by with two? I mean, Javon Kinlaw's 295, right?
Yeah, I mean he's more of a pass rusher inside. I mean
Okay. Got it.
Siaki Ika from Baylor is 335.
Okay.
Mozzie Smith is the guy that I think they're probably staring at from Michigan. He's 6'3", 325. He did
There you go.
22 reps of 325, not 225, 325. So
Who
he's
benches
crazy strong.
325? They was just like put more on. This
No,
is
no,
this is
I mean,
like
like on campus, Mozzie Smith did
oh, okay,
23
okay,
reps of
okay.
325.
Wow,
But
I can do that.
there's yeah, seriously. Kalijah Cansey is unbelievable, but he's more of a rusher. Jalen Redmond, I thought had a great workout from Oklahoma. He's really interesting. They met with Dante Stills from West Virginia, but he's about 285. I like the Notre Dame. There's two guys I really love. Jason Adamialola from Notre Dame, but he's 6'3", 285. He's much more like a Kevin Givens. And then the other guy I really love as well is Dawan Johnson from Toledo. He played with Sammy Womack last year. He's also 6'3", 280 in that range, but they're interior pass rushers. So, you might want to go for like, if by chance you like those guys in the draft, maybe sign a guy like Colin Saunders from the Chiefs, somebody like that, or maybe you re-sign Ridgeway and then you go for a couple of these interior rushers. But they need both. They need that two gapper to keep the bodies off of their smallish linebackers, and then they also need some pass rush, whether it be from Givens or whoever else they're going to have in the interior.
I think the run defense might be even more important because the way I look at it is the Niners kind of wrote off that entire NFC Championship game, but their defense they lost their quarterback, but their defense gave up 31 points, and they really got manhandled by the Eagles' offensive line from Mailata to Dickerson to Kelsey. Like, they were just gouging the Niners' defense. Kelsey is great. They're always going to have that strength up the middle in Philly. The Niners have to be able to match up with that. And they have the same thing in Kansas City with Creed Humphrey and Joe Tooney. So the Niners really need someone who could stand up to these really elite interior offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, Poona Ford would be a good free agent.
He'd be phenomenal. He's good.
Poona's 5'11", but
is he really?
Yeah, he's 5'11", 310.
Wow. That fits. That's DJ Jones. That's DJ Jones. That works. All right, I got one more question for you, and then I'll let you go. But this is another combine question. The Niners need a right tackle. It doesn't seem like they're going to re-sign Mike McGlinchey. Offensive tackles are very expensive in free agency. Very expensive. So if they could get one in the draft, a starter, that would be great. Unfortunately, they don't pick till pick 99. Is there anyone you think that's in their range that you like, that you see?
Yeah, there's a couple guys. One guy that's slightly out of their range and they met with him in Indy. His name's Blake Freeland from BYU.
Is it Freeland?
Freeland,
Blake,
I should say.
Blake Freeland?
Freeland. Blake Freeland. 6'8", 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Then there's the monster kid from Ohio State, DeJuan Jones, who's 6'8", 375. I mean, he's an absolute monster. Jalen Duncan, watch him from University of Maryland. He's a redshirt senior. He's only about 305 pounds only, I say. But he's interesting. And my favorite guy in the draft as far as day 3 sleeper tackle is the Illinois tackle, Alex Pelzuski. And I actually went and watched this guy for, I spent like a half hour watching this guy's film. This kid is really a good prospect. He got an extra year of eligibility because of COVID. Did not allow a sack his senior season. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. He wore 63 for the Illini. Pro Football Focus gave him an 81.4 grade. That was 10th best in all of college football. Finished his career with 713 consecutive pass blocking snaps without allowing a sack, blocked for Tommy DeVito and Chase Brown, the running back there at Illinois. 65 career starts, really good pass blocker and really versatile. He also played a little right guard. He's played a little left guard. Alex Palzewski, they have him going right around 250, which means he's like late day 3. I think he's probably going to go in the 5th or probably late 5th to early 7th. But that's the guy I really like. His parents come from Poland, and he's like one of these kids that he's just tough as hell, and he loves to play, and he's a pretty good pass blocker, really strong run blocker too, I think, at least potential. And he's tough, and he's in Big Ten, good coaching. I like him a lot.
Tell me more about Blake Freeland. He just tore up the combine.
Tore it up. I mean, and BYU had a tremendous line. If you watch Jalen Duren, the quarterback there for BYU, he was rarely, if ever, under pressure. I mean, now there's a little bit of a step up in competition, right? I mean, the level that he played at BYU, the players that he's going to block in the NFL are definitely better. But I love him. I mean, he's a tremendous player. He's a great athlete. He's 6'8". He definitely has the frame to put on more weight. He's from a small town in Utah, Harriman, Utah. He came out after his junior year, and or I should say, he was great his junior year. He was a 4-year starter though.
He looks like a much more athletic, younger McGlinchey, but a better athlete to me.
Yeah,
more fluid.
You know what? This guy, first of all, he's a 6-time All-State in track and field in high school. He was an All-State basketball player. He was the team captain on his basketball team, and then he also threw the shot and the javelin on the
good athlete
on the track team. UCLA wanted him, SC wanted him, Vandy wanted him, UW wanted him, and he went to BYU. So I mean, well coached, definitely, has blocked for in a good offense. I think there's ability that this player could come in and play right away. And I also think that 2 years from now, he could be 330. He's got the frame to put on a lot of weight.
So they do have some available.
Probably going to be a day 2 or late round 2 pick though. So they're going to probably have to trade up, but because he had such a great combine. I think he would have been there for them, Grant, if he didn't blow up the combine. The fact that he did, and tackles are so valued, he won't go in the first round, but he's probably going to go in the middle of the second round.
Yeah, why would he fall to the end of round 3 if he's 6'8" and an offensive tackle and a really good athlete? Like, why would he?
Right.
Everyone wants those.
Yeah, and when you watch these guys move around, you can kind of tell like which guys have played other sports and that kind of thing, because he moved naturally and very but and it's a good program for sure. I mean, and Jalen Duren moved around a lot, so if you're gonna have your quarterbacks running all over the place, you want to have an athlete that has some speed. Or offensive line has some speed.
I'd like to see the Niners bet on traits and bring in athletes at the offensive line, because too often they don't. Like Jake Brendel, that's what they did. He had great athletic testing numbers. He'd never really been given an opportunity, and he ended up being a quality starter who missed no games. Like Spencer Burford, Jalen Moore, Colton McKivitz, these are kind of like tough, gritty, try hard day 3 guys who aren't really not really good athletes. Look at Philly's line. Jordan Mailata. Oh my God, he ran a 5'1" at 380 pounds. Like, these are amazing athletes they have on the Philly offensive line, and they're big too. You should be betting on traits. I think the Niners could do better with that, because they have a great offensive line coach. You can get the best out of them.
One guy who's also a real sleeper, who I really love, the more film I watch, you got to watch this guy. His name's Curtis McClendon, and he plays for Tennessee Chattanooga. And he played guard, but I think he could play a little right tackle. He's 6'6", 325.
Okay.
And he's a tremendous athlete. Really, really like him. And also look at the UCLA guys. They got Antonio Maffei and John Gaines.
John Gaines. Let's talk about John Gaines. That's the guy who's projected to be undrafted free agent, but he destroyed the combine.
Yeah. I mean,
did a great job.
Yeah, he's UCLA gets some blue chip athletes. This guy wore 57. He's a Wisconsin kid who went to Marquette University High School in Wisconsin. 6'4", 300 pounds.
Guard, center, could do either one.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the other thing about Gaines that I love, super smart. He earned his undergraduate
Bruin.
degree in political science. He's enrolled as a graduate student already.
Nice.
He was on the academic honor roll. So I mean,
Sounds like a center.
you're talking
Sounds like
about
a potential center.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's got athleticism and intelligence. I think in Kyle's offense, intelligence on the O line is a must.
Especially at center. With Nick Zakel, they kept saying, well, he has a master's degree. He already got his master's. It's like, okay, that's great, but is he an NFL athlete? Well, yeah, but maybe we'll see.
I like Nick Zakel, man. I really do. I like
he's
Nick Zakel.
big, but we'll
He's
see how he
tough,
moves.
too. He's
He's
tough.
tough. He's big. He's got short arms, so he's got to play center, and he doesn't have that like elite 20-yard shuttle that like Jason Kelsey and Creed Humphrey and even Jake Brendel had. But maybe he can figure out his own way to win at the center position. Nick Zakel.
The other guy that's really interesting that could be there if they wanted to trade up is Cody Mauch from North Dakota State, who's the redheaded guy with the gigantic gap in his teeth. He has played center. He's played guard. He's played tackle. He's working out with Joe Staley. He's another guy. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, but 3 years from now, he could be 6'5", 310, 315. He could be a center to start.
Yeah.
He could be a right tackle. What I love about Cody Mauch is when you watch the film, Grant, it's like it looks like he just wants to annihilate the guy across from him. I mean, he buries people.
Really strong, but he's also moved. I mean, he did really well in the agility drills too, didn't he?
Yeah, McCory's like Larry likes everybody.
No, but this guy is legitimately good. I think he's going to be probably a second round pick though.
Yeah, maybe late.
I'm saying maybe late first. He's legitimately good. He went to the same school as Trey, right? North Dakota State.
Yep.
Double B Studio says Niners need to draft a right tackle, especially when the highest ranked free agent right tackle is Mike McGlinchey and ranked fourth best O lineman. There's nothing good. Also, you never know when Trent Williams is going to hang it up. So it's probably good to just start drafting offensive tackles in general, guys who have legitimate starter traits.
No question. I'll say this. The one guy that I saw in the combine that I thought, oh my God, that's totally Niners written all over him is the Stanford wide receiver, Elijah Higgins, who's really probably a movement tight end. And Elijah Higgins is just an incredible athlete, 6'3", 235. But Grant, they're going to play. He's going to be a movement tight end.
And it sounds like Jordan Matthews. Sounds like Jordan Matthews on the 49ers. Yeah, that sounds like a project.
With a little bit more natural weight instead of just all in the upper body.
Yeah. I got one question, a quick one before we go. So we're thinking along the lines of what the Niners are going to do this offseason. But I think one thing the Niners are doing is probably thinking, what are the Eagles going to do this offseason? Because that's their main rival, and there's a little bit of an arms race. And the Eagles have a very good roster, but they need running backs. They have Kenneth Gainwell. Miles Sanders is a free agent. Boston Scott is a free agent. They got the 10th pick, the 30th pick, and the 60th pick in the draft. Which running back do you think they'll take? I'm curious. They're going to get a good one.
Yeah. I mean, Bijan Robinson is the star back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Dallas wants him bad. I mean, he's a star.
I don't think Philly's going to take him.
Jahmyr Gibbs from Bama,
very good.
The Georgia Tech transfer who shared time with JP Mason. I could see him. I could see Charbonnet. I could see Chase Brown.
What do you think of the kid from Texas A&M, Devon? Was A-Chain?
Yeah, A-Chain. I mean, he to me, A-Chain's not an every down back. He's a returner.
Darren Sproles.
I mean, Darren Sproles though was 208, 210 at 5'8". This guy's 185. I mean, he's a ridiculous home run hitter. The Eagles are so good at drafting. I would bet anything they'll wind up with Jahmyr Gibbs, just because Gibbs is such a star. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs,
he's really good.
Superstar.
What do you think of Charbonnet? He's my favorite.
I love Charbonnet. 6'1", 220, body lean, tough, can catch it. Yeah, Charbonnet's a terrific prospect. I mean, he
tough.
I mean, Charbonnet started at Michigan, transferred to UCLA, but he's a Southern California kid who played at Oaks Christian, and he was a 4-star high school recruit. He's a tremendous player. I mean, he's a tremendous player. He's played a lot, so
He
I
has.
don't know if how people feel about the mileage on him, but
He
man,
seems like
every
he'd
time
be a
I
good
watch
fit for the
Charbonnet, it's like
Niners.
nobody could tackle him one on one.
Nobody can tackle him one-on-one. He seems like he'd be a
Oh,
good fit for the Niners because he's got that punishing rushing style that they covet. Not that they're in the market, but
I will say
no,
this
you never
though,
know.
man, this draft is stacked with backs. I mean, day 3 backs. There's so many great day 3 backs in this draft. I mean, it's like Deneric Prince from Tulsa, amazing. He's going Sir Roderick Thompson from Texas Tech, really good. So there's some really good running backs in day 3 that I don't. The Niners are so loaded at running back. I would say running back and linebacker are strictly day 3 for the Niners.
Yeah, and this is an argument why, teams like Kansas City generally don't spend on running backs and wide receivers is because every year, look at the draft. Every
Pacheco.
year it's like look at these look at this guy in round 7. Pacheco in round 7. Like every year there are like 15 wide receivers that get drafted who are really good. So just something to keep in mind when you have to decide whether to give Brandon Ayuk $100 million. Like
Yeah, you can't. You can't.
you
Well, and as
can't
far as
give
running backs
everyone
go,
yeah.
but you had a guy in here who said Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn is tiny for K State, but ridiculous little return guy. It's just unbelievable. Deuce Vaughn, he's explosive.
Good name too. I like the name Deuce.
Deuce Vaughn, yeah.
Remember, I was looking through the Eagles like draft history. Remember they took Deuce Staley, 5'11",
Yeah.
245. He was
Who's a great coach now. I don't know
Yes,
if
he is.
you saw Deuce
Staley.
Staley with Detroit this year, and I think he just left Detroit to go somewhere else. But yeah, if the Niners could find their version of Isaiah Pacheco, I mean, look how great Pacheco. Pacheco's so good, Grant, that there's talk that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be traded by the Chiefs, and they invested in a first-round pick in Edwards-Helaire.
And what you're learning is like I feel how many running backs average more than 15 carries a game in the NFL in a given season? 10, maybe.
Yeah.
I think what you're seeing is you don't want to wear out your running backs by giving them too many carries. You're better off having a running back by committee. Yep. And if no one on your team's getting more than 15 carries, why are you drafting these running backs in round 1 or even in the top half of round 2? Like they're not going to make a big enough impact. They're going to be in a committee. They might get hurt anyway. Be prudent at this position.
No more Trey Sermons for the Niners.
No. He's on Philly though. Grant's camera looking good. Thank you. I've had this in the box for 6 months, and I just never put it together.
Really?
But now I did. Yeah.
Why? How come?
Because I'm so always focused in the here and now and what I got to do this moment that I'm never thinking about what I should do down the line. I saw so many other people upgrading, and I got jealous, and I was like, okay, I got to do it.
Jesse's got a nice camera.
Jesse had a whole nice. He made me jealous.
Had the
I got to
setup, new mic. I'm doing the new mic, new cameras thing as well.
See, yeah, that spurs motion when people start doing it and making you look second rate. Not that you look second rate. You look great. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to be going on with Larry on his channel later on this week.
From Arizona. I'm going to be going to Arizona for a little spring training.
That's always fun.
And,
my dad used to take me.
We'll be hanging in Arizona for a few days.
Scottsdale in March is a fun place to be.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be back in literally a half an hour with Marco Martinez if you want a little bit more Niner talk. Hang out. Peace.